Thank you so much for coming back. The second panel is about men as equal agents of change. And when we're talking about tackling gender equality, discrimination, the question that we're trying to tackle here in this next hour is, do men have a specific responsibility in fighting these battles? And particularly we're interested in whether this is just about promoting good practices, or is the issue also about how men themselves are treated and portrayed? We'll also, I hope, in the next hour come up with practical ways in which we can create change in FIFA's 211 member association. So to help us do that, we have a very distinguished panel. Let me start with Joyce Cook, if she can join us. She joined FIFA as a Chief Members Association Officer 4 months ago. She's in charge of implementing FIFA's Forward program, an initiative aimed at vastly increasing FIFA's financial support to member associations for football development. Before FIFA, Joyce had many hats, to be honest, but the running theme I could see in her career has been a commitment to gender equality and diversity in sports and the elimination of discrimination. Welcome, Joyce. Secondly, Hoon is the chairwoman of Valencia Football Club and its president since July 2015. She was also recently appointed a member of the board of directors of the Spanish Football Association and of the delegate committee of La Liga. She has over 15 years' experience in corporate finance, management, and investment. Martin Glenn is the Football Association, or FA's chief executive officer and a veteran of the marketing industry. He's well known for his ability to make a well-loved British brand more dynamic and international in its reach. Martin is also a former Leicester City non-executive director. Welcome to you as well. Anthony Keedi is a psychologist and gender specialist. He described himself as a man fighting for women's rights in the Middle East and works for Abed, a gender equality NGO based in Lebanon. Anthony has also been piloting the concept of engaging men in the fight to end violence against women and helped establish the first clinic in the region for psychological rehabilitation for men with abusive behaviors. And lastly, Keme Nzerem is a journalist currently working as a correspondent for Channel 4 News, based in the UK. Keme has covered World Cups in South Africa and Brazil, several other football tournaments, as well as some of the most notorious news events that surround the football and the footballing world. So welcome to all our panelists. I'm going to start, if I can, with you, Martin, not just because you're next to me, but because I found this something that you said or a comment that you gave to The Guardian not so long ago, very interesting, and I want to read out this quote. He said, "The research we've done on the barriers to women's football is really clear. Girls feel they're going to be judged, that people will think they're a certain type of girl, and that's not the image they want. The other is a lack of support from parents. The two are probably linked. So a lot of work we've got to do is to tackle those things. In 10 years' time, it won't be an issue. It's a societal thing that I think is very fixable." How do we fix it?
Well, I think you need a plan. So hope is not a good strategy. And I guess the trick that somebody like me in my position has is how to change good intentions into practical action. So, I think within the English Football Association, because of our history I'm quite new into football administration. I'm a level 1 coach, board of Leicester City, but only 2 years in football administration. And there seem to be 6 words that characterize football. It's always been done like this. And so, it's quite surprising. If you come from the world of multinationals where the whole diversity agenda is just, you wouldn't have discussions like we've had this morning, really. People have got it, and they work very hard at it, and they plan it. Football and sport just seems to be, about a decade back. So you need a plan, and you also need one other thing, which is really helpful. FIFA kind of has it. In the English Football Association, we've got more of it now. You need money. You need to have a surplus where you can try and overinvest in certain parts of the game. And because women's been historically underinvested in England, we feel it's entirely right to tip the balance, not purely for fairness reasons, but also because we think it will positively change the nature of how the FA is seen in England, but also the way that football in general is seen.
Where would you funnel that money to specifically?
Well, we've hired some new people. So we've hired a very high-profile lady called Dame Sue Campbell, who's really one of the drivers of recent British Olympic success, really getting a lot of the Olympic sports up and running. So a really high caliber individual that can think strategically and break that down into action points. So we've hired some good people to go and do that. We've presented to our board and to our council a big investment program which has been accepted, and then we're breaking that down into two areas really. Firstly, in England, getting more girls to play in school, in early school time, because only 4 out of 10 English schools offer football. So, that's fairly doable, but it takes time and it takes effort. And then secondly, what we call the player pathway, the transmission mechanism from I play at school to I can join a club, and then for talented girls, I can get into an accelerated development scheme to go and work for the national team. Because actually, in England, I think it's true in a lot of countries, the national team's success is absolutely catalytic in raising enthusiasm and awareness of the women's game. So the finishing third in the World Cup in Canada last year, beating America yesterday. Sorry, I had to mention that. Narrowly losing to France, we'll say that too. So the success of the national team for the women, I think more so than for the men, has this great sort of halo effect in wanting girls to play football. So we need to make sure that the England team continues to be well resourced.
And very quickly, do you still stick to your 10-year fixable?
Oh, yeah, I think you have to be an optimist in this role. So our target for 2020, we have a 4-year plan started last year that we will double the number of women playing football in England. It's a reasonably high base now, but slightly below Germany and France. So we want to double the number of teams, and we're well on track to do it.
Yeah, well, this audience will hold you to account to that.
I'm sure, and you're welcome too.
I want to turn to you, Anthony, because there is a problem in football and stereotype. It's not just about it being a man's game, it's a certain type of man's game. Tell us about the work that you've done in terms of sort of, breaking down these stereotypes and the work that you do with men.
Sure. So maybe I want to start off by telling a story about a conversation that I had with one of the men that we work with in our organization. And this man was talking about his daughter who was in one of our programs for empowering through football. And he was talking about how much stronger she had gotten and how much more confidence she had gotten ever since she started playing football and working with our staff. And he started even talking about how they had commonalities that they could talk about now, since there was the love of the game that they could talk about. And the ironic part of this conversation for me was that the same person who was now reveling in the sunshine of her praise was the same person who had confined her to the shadows before. So it was her father, the same man, who was uncomfortable at first with her playing football, a man's sport. He was uncomfortable with the practices every week that she had to go to. And it needed a lot of work with him in order to understand the benefits that would happen for her. And then later on, also for him to reflect and to really appreciate the benefits that were his and the connection that he now had with his daughter. And that's really the trick of it all. When I spoke to him and we reflected on how we had started off, he looked back at himself and he was like, it's just the way we were raised. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about gender discrimination. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about gender socialization. And the women's empowerment movement is so important and critical and always needs to continue, because where women were once told you should be subservient and shy and not speak until spoken to, and your value is in your beauty, the empowerment movement came and broke every single one of those lies and told women and worked with them so they could realize the power they have as individuals. But maybe we don't do enough of that work with men. Not in the same way, because there are different challenges for men. But men were told lies of emotion is weakness. You have to have the answer. You have to be tough. You are the head of the household. And all of those are lies. All of those comes with negative effects from a mental health perspective, as well as the dynamics in the family, their connections with other people, and our society as a whole. And it's really working with men to understand that they shoot themselves in the foot. They stand in their own path to progress. And we know gender equality is beneficial for women, but we also need to show how beneficial that can be for men as partners who support strong women, and how society as a whole is really going to benefit when we change our understanding of what it means to be a man. And this is really where I feel football, and coming from someone who loves the game, can really be beneficial. Because football as a sport is 11 people on 2 teams kicking around a football on a pitch, trying to kick it into a net for 90 minutes. And if we wanted to be that simplistic about it, that's where it would end. But at some point, the sport can elevate into something more. It can become the beautiful game. And you have that when those 11 people become a team. And when that team has respect for one another, and unity, and a unified goal, and communication, and non-violence. And we can use those principles in that sport to have men understand that women are our partners, they're our team. And it's only when we have that respect, and that equality, and that non-violence, and that communication, and everyone has their role. The individual player is only a player by themselves. They become a champion when they're with a team. And the same way we need to explain and show men through football and other mechanisms that when men embrace women's power and women's leadership, that's when we can become something more than just people living together. And we can become a just, equal, and truly powerful society, especially when tackling issues of terror, violence, economical issues. Women are part of the key to unlock in our partnership as equal partners with women in order to become that society that we want to be.
I just want to push you a little bit, Anthony, on this idea of what the exact role is of, say, a big football star. Because what we've seen, and we've certainly seen FIFA do this, is to promote this, certain characteristics of a male football star, and we see them sort of on TV, and they will go on social media and say how they respect their wives and how they're good people, and beating their wives is bad, or whatever it is that message is, and it often presents women as victims, and that's often the message that we get from celebrities in general. So how is it that we can, tweak that so that there's more positive image?
So I think that there's definitely a positivity in the sense that at least violence against women is very understood. That when men come out and say that they're not violent against women, or when they're good people, as you put it or as they put it, then that's a start. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about male allies for change, because you're not an ally. And this is a concept we call benevolent sexism, and that's where you haven't really changed the power dynamic. All you've done is decided that now you are going to take a stance and solve the problem for women. And women don't need you to solve the problem for them. They need you to support them while they solve the problem themselves, while we work together. But that's the point. And when we work together to solve those problems together, that's the important part. So yes, obviously being nonviolent, obviously being that type of person is good, but where we can really utilize those role models and put them on display for people to see is those men who support women in their careers, who take an equal role with raising their children. Again, the role of men as fathers are one of those things that we really work on when we're changing that masculine gender role, because so many men grow up thinking that they're going to be an ATM and that's their role as a father, to make money and provide for the family. And so you have women left alone in the house, not seeking out their careers. And the children suffer because they don't have a father around. It's about teaching men to play that role, to be affectionate, to understand that emotion and emotional intelligence and understanding them and communicating in a nonviolent way is actually something that makes you so much more powerful. And when we have those examples, that's really where we can really put those men out there and show that how sometimes you step up by stepping back and allowing the woman next to you to shine because she deserves that opportunity, just like society gives men the opportunity.
Right, and I guess FIFA has a role in promoting that sort of image as men as caregivers, men as parents,
I think that the path has started. There's so much more that can be done, though. So
yeah. Hoon, I want to switch to you because you are a woman in a position, in a very high position in football. I want to sort of give you a platform to just tell us about your experiences, sort of the hindrances, the hurdles along the way.
I think you take the whole day to talk about my experience in world of football. I think, firstly, I think it's a big challenge for women to run in a senior position of a European football club. And on top of that, I think maybe because I'm a Chinese, and I think it's even more difficult for a Chinese woman trying to run in a European football club. I think in general, I think there's this stereotype about women that does not understand football at all. And a football club can never be run by a woman, no matter how. Because so far, I've heard a lot of such comment, but there was never a reason given. And also, I think sometimes because in this modern world where people are more educated, it appears like is a correct political statement to support gender equality. It appears to be very cool and trendy to support gender equality, but many times I think action is more important than lip service. And also many times, especially for people like us, for women like us that work in the world of football that is dominant by so many men, and many times you can feel the undercurrent of sexism. I mean, not to mention that you do experience that in the business world, but I think sometimes it's even more so in the world of football.
So what advice do you have as to how you overcome this?
I think at the end, I think women, we have to believe in ourselves. We have to have that self-confidence that we have the qualities and the capability to do certain job well. And of course, the support from the environment is very important. The support from the top and the support from the bottom is very important. I think I am fortunate enough that I have a boss, a shareholder that has such open mind that he recognizes my capability and allows me to take up the president's appointment after our acquisition of the European club. And I think you need to have more bosses like this, or more men that is holding that kind of decision power to be able to recognize and give the equal opportunities to women that is able to do a job. I always feel that although in the world of football is traditionally is so dominated by men, but I think women with we are so pragmatic, yeah? Because in the world of football, sometimes you feel like it's a congregation of big egos, and managing that big ego sometimes is such taken up such a large part of your work. And I think women being very sensitive, being very pragmatic towards problem solving, I think we will be able to do the job equally well.
Right. I want to ask you this, though. I mean, beyond the sort of, I guess that sort of stereotypical, you're a woman, so what do you know about football, thing that you come against. Apart from that, what is the sort of day-to-day issues that you face when you're talking about sexism? Because if we're going to try and break them down, we really have to try and understand what they are.
I think on a day-to-day basis, normally you have a lot of challenges and difficulties. Things doesn't go well, and a lot of time you have to take extra effort to convince people that your view, your proposals is the right one, because underneath their mindset is that you do not know, you do not understand, you do not know how a football club is being run.
Right.
So I think you need to work doubly hard to show your work.
So if that same proposal that you have, that you're giving, was given by a man, you think it would be taken more seriously?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think on the other hand, when you at the time of difficulties, when there are doubts, the first doubt will be because you are a woman, because you do not understand the game. And it's not because of what are the other factors that is affecting the situation.
Right, and I think, you know, in different walks of life, I think women face this. I certainly faced it in my broadcast career. I'm sure, you know, in journalism we have a fair share of that as well. And often it's that you don't feel like you're being taken as seriously. In fact, when I first started in broadcast, one of the first things that my bosses did, and I was probably about 24, is that they took me into a room and they sort of sat me there for days, trying to lower the tone of my voice so that it sounded more sort of, like it is now, a little bit more baritone, and not higher up like this, because apparently no one takes you seriously if you speak in a sort of a higher voice. And so essentially they're trying to, you know, emasculate you, because you are taken more seriously if you look a little bit more like a man, if you sound a little bit more like a man. So, I mean, just to say that I definitely sympathize, and I think that the issues that we're talking about here run beyond football as well. Joyce, you have a very big task, I guess, ahead of you, and lots of responsibility on your shoulders. Tell us about what FIFA has tasked you with and how it's going.
Well, I guess I should start by saying a big hello to many of you in the room. I come from the same roots as a lot of you here today. As you know, my background is in the NGO sector in football and sports for over a decade. So I feel your passion and I feel your heartbeat for sure, and I've carried those values with me to my new role. I sat here a year ago in the audience as an NGO representative, and I remember a small comment that the president made. So I'm clearly a disabled woman, and this very door here, we had to open both doors for me to be able to enter the room. And Gianni made a small comment about he, in his new role as president of FIFA, feeling the need to open the doors for women, and he made a comment to say, even if it be opening the door for Joyce. Little did I know that a year later I would be sat here with one of the most senior roles in the administration of FIFA, having come, if you will, to this side of football. We're one big family. So I have a really exciting role. It's a real privilege to hold that role, and I am the chief officer for the member associations. And what does that mean? It means a number of things, but one of the critical aspects of that is to oversee the delivery of the new Forward programme, the funding development programme, which will see more than 4 billion spent in the next decade on development. What does that really mean and equate to? Well, if I can sort of crunch that down a little bit further, on a 4-year cycle now, we have increased the funding to the member associations from 1.6 million to 5 million. That's an incredible further investment in football. And I think it does deserve an applause, by the way. But with that comes an incredible responsibility. We're at the most exciting moment in football, in my belief. We've seen a lot of change, an incredible amount of change. We've seen football come under the spotlight like never before. So a great responsibility goes with that funding. It is the members' money. FIFA is an association of its member associations, and we should remember that. But we all need to be more accountable. So we've done a number of things in implementing the Forward programme. There are very stringent regulations, and I'll speak a bit more about that in a moment. But there's also much more accountability. For the first time, the member associations' annual audits will be publicised on the FIFA website, and inshallah, if they have the ability, on their own website. So very publicly available information on how this money is being spent. On a yearly basis, we will gather reports on how that money is being invested. So we are ensuring that this is accountable for everybody's sake, for the members' sake, for FIFA's sake, but most importantly of all, for all of our sakes, because football belongs to every one of us. I don't know if any of you know my journey. I think there are people in the audience that clearly do. I came to football as a football fan, and I became disabled about 18 years ago, and I confess I took it very badly. I hated using the wheelchair, and I stopped going out of the house. And my love for watching live football tempted me back just to try it out, just to go outside the door to see how it might be. And it gave me my life back. Now, that's not a unique story. I speak to so many people, disabled people and other people who have had similar experiences. So for me, this game gives us a lot, but we have a responsibility to ensure that we respect the family that is football, the diverse family that is football. Those of us that are gay, those of us are women, those of us are from an ethnic background, those of us of faith, those of us that are disabled, and so on. We have to ensure this game belongs to everybody. So to be given this opportunity to oversee this funding is extraordinary. To be able to engage directly with all the member association is an incredible opportunity. I'll come back to the regulations of forward funding. Not only are we looking at transparency and how that money is spent, the regulations go still further. So in terms of the operational costs that the funding allows the member associations each year, there are 10 criteria that they have to choose from and be accountable for in terms of the $500,000 that is spent each year on operational costs. The really good news is 3 of those criteria are women's criteria: women's competitions, girls' competitions, and strategic planning for gender equality and leadership and governance. But additionally, there is an additional criteria that is also based purely on integrity and governance. So if you will, we've taken a baseline of $37,000 per year for every member association in the old system of funding to at least $100,000, perhaps 150 if they choose all 3 criteria, and perhaps even 200 if they choose the integrity and governance and include gender within that. You may say, well, so what? But the difference is the accountability now, and for me that's an important part. We're not policing the member associations, we're ensuring that all of us are transparent and we're investing well. So I sit here today with a big job ahead, but an exciting job, and I can tell you for sure, I would not have taken this job if I didn't believe that FIFA was changing, and I made that clear at my interview. But much more importantly than that, it was made abundantly clear to me that's why I was chosen for this job, because of my background, because of my experiences in change-making football, but with equality and inclusion at the heartbeat of that. I was asked a strange question by somebody when I accepted this job, and they said, how are you going to give up equality and diversity? Of course, it's a silly question, and I politely responded accordingly. It has to be seamlessly part of every single thing each of us do, and we have to do it on a conscious level. The game will not change by chance. It will change because each of you challenges and questions and helps and provides solutions on the journey we're all on.
Yes, thank you. Inspirational. Keme, I turn to you. I guess for a critical look of FIFA's reforms, its 2.0 vision. I also am going to give you an opportunity to answer some of what came up in the last panel as well about the media's role in this sort of stereotyping of football and you know, whether it's a man's game or not. But first, your sort of thoughts on FIFA's reforms.
Well, to the larger piece, in a sense, I'd like to speak from 2 perspectives, and one is as a journalist with that critical view, but also I was really struck by something that Keedi said to the president: act like a dad, act like a father. I've got 2 girls, one is 5 and one is 9, and creating as men, the title of this panel is Men as Agents of Change. How do we create or help to create an environment that is supportive and celebrates women's role in football. And when I say that, I mean their aspirations, whether they want to become elite players, whether they just want to have a kickabout, whether they want to be administrators, the rest of it. So looking at that from the perspective of a dad and seeing how my two daughters would experience that. Yesterday, the panelists and the people that have been assembled to contribute to this conference we had a very nice evening at the FIFA Museum, and we were given a tour. And the individuals who gave the tour were fantastic, but the language was entirely male. Every single person, every single individual involved in football that they referred to was a he, which struck me as somewhat ironic given the purpose of our gathering. The centerpiece of the presentation is a film that FIFA have put together, which showcases the highlights of every World Cup that's ever been televised, every men's World Cup that's ever been televised. These things are really important because I thought, well, hang on a minute, if my 9-year-old who's playing football and really loves it was with me, she would see a vision of football that does not include her. And these are actually really easy things to change. Language is really easy to change, and the stuff that we've been talking about, quotas. When are we going to see a female player earning 200,000 euros a week? They're hard, but talking about football in a way that reflects that it does belong to all of us is really quite straightforward, and that goes to the core of what needs to change. I'd just like to tell another story from the perspective of father. One of my very good friends has two daughters. They're a bit older than mine. They're 13 and 9. And like my kids, they play football, or at least they played football. And the younger one, when she got to secondary school, gave up, didn't want to play anymore. Peer pressure. And I said to him, "What? So the boys didn't let her play anymore?" He said, "No, it wasn't the boys, it was the girls. It was the girls who said, 'What do you want to play football for? That's not a game for you. That's not a sport for you.'" And it made me so sad. It made me really, really sad. And I think talking to some of the elite football players around here, I may have this wrong, but most of them have said, actually, the boys were really happy that I showed up because I could play and I got stuck in and they didn't really care. You know, if you can kick a football, you can kick a football, man. It's as simple as that, right? So as fathers, what do we do? How do we encourage our girls? How do we create that environment that makes it somewhere that they want to be? Do you take a football with you when you go to the park and just have it in the bag along with the packed lunch and the skateboard and the rest of it? When she comes home from school at the end of the day, do you say to her, and she's played football, do you say to her, as well as did you score, because we always say did you score, unless you're a goalkeeper, do you say, did you get sweaty? Did you try really hard? Did you try and include the other players who perhaps weren't getting a look in, which I think is perhaps a reflection on how we might see football through a slightly more feminist or inclusive lens. So it's really important that at every stage, we as men, as ordinary men, as fathers, as husbands, the rest of it, you know, we are 50% give take of the population of the family of football, that we're really conscious of what we do at the micro level. To that bigger picture of the media and the media's responsibility. So I work for Channel 4, which did some very, very clever work with the Paralympics in 2012 and attempting to rebrand what was once upon a time just the add-on, really, in terms of broadcast terms, to the Olympics. And making a transition from athletes who were triumphing over adversity, and to a degree there was an element of that because some of disability sport, which has made it into Paralympic sport, may not have the funding and high-level elite kind of aspirations as some of the other sports. But they tried very hard to rebrand it as elite sport. These are athletes who work really hard, just as hard as their able-bodied counterparts. So let's transpose that onto women's football. And we've got the Women's Euros coming up. What is the story that we try and tell? Do we just brand these athletes as elite footballers, which would kind of be the easy thing? Or do we recognize that actually there is a more powerful story here to tell? And if so, what is that story that doesn't undermine the fact that they are elite athletes? You know, because we're used to their mums, and one of the stereotypes that I think we have had to contend with in terms of telling female footballers' stories is because of the semi-professional nature. Sometimes that backstory does cloud their achievements as athletes. I don't have the answers to that. You know, it's something that, in a sense, the viewers have to work on as well and tell the broadcasters and the journalists what they like and what they want to see.
Sorry, I was going to ask: is there interest from your editors to cover, these kind of sports? Is something that's not, the male football World Cup?
Yes and no. It depends on the outlet. I think in the really mainstream broadcast news shows, then there is appetite to just tell a very, very straight story of Team A plays Team B, here are the stars, these are their backstories. Some of the shows, mine for example, it's more about holding power to account. It's more confrontational. So those rather simplistic but beautiful narratives of achievement sometimes get lost in the more gritty desire to expose bad things. And that isn't necessarily a story that you can tell very easily when really you are, at the end of the day, talking about 22 people hammering tongs on a football pitch and may the best team win. So yes and no is the simple answer.
I mean, one thing that I'm sure everyone hears a lot is that there simply isn't that much interest in the women's game. And so, when it comes to equal pay and so on, you can't expect that it's taken to that same level. But, Martin, you've spoken a lot about how it's almost like an untapped, area, market, women's football, and there is money to be made.
Yeah, I think there's good news. It's developing, but it's still some way off. If you take the last Women's World Cup in Britain, the viewership of that doubled from the prior World Cup. And half the number of people that were new viewers weren't regular watchers of sport. So I think that's really interesting. So I think the way that you commercialize, women's football more effectively is not just on the number of eyeballs looking, because that is going to take time, but actually the intensity with which people feel about it. So I think it is moving well, but I think there's some statistic that says, I think, of total sports coverage, once again it's UK data now, I think only 8% is of women's sports. On the BBC it's about 30. So the BBC have kind of got this. Once again, it's a public service broadcaster. It can afford to take a slightly different perspective on it. But it is steadily improving. And I think, if you see, you can get daunted by the size of the challenge and end up doing nothing. I think you've just got to keep taking individual initiatives, nudging people's behaviour. And I think football is actually a great source for social change. We often have a debate in England, do we reflect society or do we try and move it on? And I think in terms of the lack of tolerance to, say, racist abuse, it's a step change from when I was growing up. I think football is, it's not perfect, of course it isn't, nor is society, but I think because it's so ubiquitous, it's so easy a game to play, it's far bigger than anything else. So I know that we're going to have more women, for example, playing football very soon in England than play rugby, men and women. So because it touches so many people, I think the opportunity to use it in a way to make people think about their behaviour in a subtle way, in a nudging way rather than a grandiose preaching way, I think is really, really helpful.
I wonder if you watched the video that we all watched just before we went for our coffee break, and it was sort of looking at women's football in 2 minutes. And the clips in the middle were of, women athletes talking about something about essentially how pure the women's game is, how if the man's game has become sort of, corrupted by money and, fake injuries or whatever it is that drives that, the women's game is still not at that level. Is that a good branding tactic, you think, for women's football?
I think it is. I know a lot of the England team would like to be corrupted by wealth if they could. So, I think, I think it depends what your starting point is. I mean, no doubt at the elite end of the game, women footballers are earning decent money, but not nearly the same as you'd get if you were a Premier League player because of the number of broadcasting opportunities.
Right.
Do they want to see it as something different? I think there is someone said earlier, I think in the previous panel, I think women's football will thrive if it's not seen to be just the female analogue of the men's game.
Right.
So it's got to stand up for its own values. Clearly it's the same game, but stand up for its own values and be true to itself. And I think having the self-confidence for that would be, I think would be a good thing. And there is something about identity which is very strong, which is we're playing this because it's either incredibly difficult or, I don't think anyone, you speak to the backstory of anyone in the England women's football team, they have not had it easy. They've faced difficulties, discrimination. I mean, the FA only allowed football to be played from 1973, so there's no one's had it easy. And I think that sort of, I guess, success through adversity is very powerful, and I think that can capture the spirit of the game for the next 10 years.
Joyce, is this, I guess, a tactic as well that FIFA is looking at? Is this a marketing strategy that FIFA is looking at? And how do they see the women's game? Is it, is the goal to get it to the same level as the men's? Is that how everyone sees it? Or is there something, a larger plan here?
Well, it's probably a question better for my colleague Sarai to answer, as she heads up the women's game. But I think for all of us, I think we all recognise that it would be wrong to replicate the men's game. It is a different game. It has its own values, its own strengths, and all of us that have watched women's football has a rather different sort of flavour within the stadiums as a fan and in how the game's played. So I think we would be very silly to replicate. And I know Sarai's working very hard on the strategy at the moment to ensure that there is commercial value as well. And I think perhaps that's where we've missed opportunities to date. And certainly the English FA has worked that well. But that we actually look to commercial opportunities and we think outside the box. We stop sort of connecting the sponsorships up as one lump, the men's game and the women's game, because perhaps the sponsors are different and the stories they want to tell from the sponsorship partnerships.
I want to open it up for questions in a moment. Maybe I'll just ask you, Anthony, one last question while everyone thinks about theirs. I guess it's, again, sort of going back to that idea of the role of men. And, if you could give FIFA one piece of advice, or if you were hired by FIFA for a year to implement some program, what would it be?
Okay. Wow. I mean, there are so many. Okay, so number one, I would definitely want that to be more, and I know you're doing it because it's on a panel, but I think we need to stop just asking men about how we can fix something that is it's the women's game. So I think we need to give that voice to women, that ownership to women, and that agency to women to really hear what their ideas are and allow them to do that while we support them with what those ideas are. That way it comes from within. And then just for men, I would say that we do have programs and a manual that's still being validated, but it's a way of explaining to men those concepts of partnership and gender equality through those principles in the game. So there are ways that we can utilize football for men and women to promote higher order concepts, unity, respect, partnership. And again, sometimes for men, something that is very logical in football. Of course, I wouldn't want to hog the ball to myself and just play by I want to pass to my team. Okay, and then you go to their life and you say, in decision making, who do you make decisions with? Who do you talk to? Do you incorporate those around you, especially females, into those decisions? And it's no. So you have to understand that there's a power in football, that we can use those things in the game to magnify how it's not being done in their normal life, and to show them how much they can benefit when they apply those beautiful principles to their lives as allies.
Questions? Yes. Finally, you're up. Yes, okay.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Ebru Köksal, I'm from Turkey. And we heard from Saray this morning and also dear Joyce about all the wonderful things that FIFA is doing for the top-down approach. But the reality on the ground is really what Khalida told us this morning. And how do I know that? Because I was on the road on behalf of FIFA for the last 2.5 years, running many of the regional workshops and the national administration courses. And the reality on the ground is women are unfortunately in very difficult situations, and although they are very motivated and they would love to change things and do a lot for women's football or women in leadership, it's very difficult for them to start a movement on their own. And it's really this gap that we need to figure out a little bit better how to help the women on the ground. So the continuation of the courses and the regional workshops, I think, are very important in order for the women to feel that they are equipped to really fight the injustices and the discrimination on the ground. And I think a lot how we can solve this problem. And I'm going to ask Martin, actually. As women leaders in football, we volunteer to give our time to be mentors for younger leaders all over the world, either in the UEFA program or the FIFA program. But could there be a mentor-mentee match between countries? What I mean is England is doing a wonderful job for its own country, obviously, but does it ever think about how it can help global football, the lesser countries, and how you can export your relevant expertise, because you're so high up there that many countries can't even relate to the kind of wonderful things that you are doing. But there must be a way where the Germanys and Frances and the US can help the smaller countries, and we just need to figure out how we can work it.
Well, thank you for the nice things you've said about England, obviously, and the rest of Western Europe that's taking women's football seriously. I mean, you have to start somewhere. I mean, I think what you've had in Western Europe is we just started probably 25, 30 years ago, and maybe in other countries it's just starting now, so the gap seems huge. But absolutely, we'd love to share the kind of things we're doing. I mean, I think not everything applies. Things that may be specific to a Western Europe country may not work elsewhere, but they normally do, by the way. So I'm very happy. I work with Sarai, I work with Joyce. I think FIFA and the confederations are probably the best vehicle for it, just to make it efficient. But we'd be delighted to share what we do, and if that can help, then count us in.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, if I can jump in, that work is already happening. There are a number of projects around the globe where federations actually work in partnership, and I wouldn't want us to claim that achievement, because that's a piece of work that's gone on for quite a long time. The DFB comes to mind, the English FA, the French Federation. There are quite a few federations, associations that are already doing that piece of work at various levels. In terms of your question about the grassroots end of the game, the bottom up as you described it, well, that's very much part of the forward funding is aimed at that purpose. This isn't for only the elite end of the game by any means. And certainly in the discussions we've had with member associations, in the projects they're strategically planning and the contracts of agreed objectives for those project fundings, that's very much part of the work, that there will be grassroots work taking place. What we're doing as a division, as the member associations division, is, I think, working much more closely than ever before with the women's division, with the technical division, refereeing, coaching, and so on, to ensure that real cross pieces of work happen, that we're working as a team. Without being too disrespectful, I'm not sure that we necessarily did that to the best of our ability before, and it's always a work in progress, but it's something I'm passionate about and something that we're doing. And I think really lastly within that is that clear message that the money is much more accountable now. It is really, truly accountable. So be mindful that you work with your member associations. You know, I worked for many years as an NGO. I understand change making, and I don't say that lightly. But the only way you change make is if you have people at the table that are listening to one another, and that has to include the member associations, because at the end of the day, the member associations are running football. So we have to ensure we work in partnership. So my challenge to you is to, if you don't already have relations with your member associations, then speak to them about what they're doing and their strategic planning and how you may be involved as an NGO, how you may add value to that. And if you're working in the game, in women's football in particular, then challenge your member association. Have they applied for that level of funding in the operational costs? And if so, ask for some accountability on how it's being spent and how you can be part of that. And as I said, that really will be transparent as we look at the reporting and at how the monies has been spent. So we are in a new era, but that means we've all got to ask questions and we've all got to challenge, and I think it's a really exciting time. So very important questions, but hopefully we're already on that journey.
Thank you. More questions? Go ahead. On the left.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I work for the IOC for the Youth Olympic Games. And I've also played football since I was 6 years old. So this is really it's a really, really great opportunity to be here and listen to all of you. And just to remember from, when we're 12 years old and we were given the worst pitch and, the second team's old uniforms to play. I mean, it has changed so much since then, and that's because of all of these people in the room. And also thanks to FIFA, which I think has done really a great job. A lot to be done, but really, really an amazing job. And I just wanted to ask, because we are also exploring things with the Youth Olympic Games in terms of mixed gender and mixed nationality competitions. If the co-ed is something, maybe not on a competition level, but if the co-ed football is something that you think can help, because I think in my experience, I think it's so logical. Like, if you're on the same playing field, we always say, oh, it's a different game for men and women, but in the end, if you're on the same playing field, you respect each other, you play together, and it builds a whole different relationship of just being, okay, this is the women's team, this is the men's team, and that's it. So what is the role you think of co-ed football?
Sarah, thank you.
I think maybe, I'll just explain something about this co-ed game. I think, as you know, I think just now it was mentioned that Valencia Football Club, we have a collaboration with UN Women on this promoting gender equality issues. And under this program, we are actually developing a co-ed game. And we are in the finalization of the game. It's likely going to be in US, where our first team male and the first team female will be putting up a team to play against a US team. And we are delighted to brief FIFA yesterday and looking at some of the format as well. So I think when this is ready, we'll be very happy to launch this as a friendly game. But at the same time, is also to increase awareness about gender equality issues. If I may just add a little bit to talk about promoting women's football, just to share some of the positive progress that what we have experienced in our club is that when I first arrived at the club 2.5 years ago, we have a women's first division team, but they are at the, I think, 14th position at that time in the La Liga first division. And no one pays attention to the women's team because for obvious reason. And because of my arrival, and we look at it, and we always talk about money in modern football nowadays, but you'll be very surprised that the first thing that I did is to give recognition to the girls, is to give recognition to the effort that they have put up in delivering their performance in the game. And that itself has given a lot of motivation for them. They are not fully professional players. They all have a day job or they are students in a university, but they are so motivated in every game. And because of the recognitions that the club has given to them, the importance of developing women's football, last season we achieved 4th position in the La Liga league, and this season we're in the 3rd position. So I think for many women, when we're trying to excel in things that we do, I think the support and the recognition, sometimes it matters a lot more than money.
Okay, thanks. Very quick comments from here. Keme?
I think that to your point of co-ed team sport, the real issue is because we segregate so young, we don't actually know. We don't. We don't know how good, how much stronger, faster, whatever, skillful women could be. And there is perhaps one player, in a sense, if you're talking about size, purely as a physical attribute, that everybody will be familiar with, and that's Leo Messi. He was written off as a kid, but no, we're going to give him a chance because we think he's got potential. So I'm really interested in what co-ed sport could deliver, because we literally don't know how much more powerful sport could be if it was properly integrated.
Right. So it's a great question, especially working in Lebanon. We work a lot with refugee populations, having the highest level of refugees per capita in a country that for 2 years we didn't even have a president. So we're not the most stable, you would say, as a country. But this is where I would point out to, we have to pilot a lot of different models. One thing we do need to be very aware of is that could be a positive thing, but it really needs, we need to talk to the girls on the ground as well, because sometimes there is a need for a female space, especially sometimes in highly patriarchal settings where they don't feel like they have that space. So when we talk to those women, we can see with them, do they want to play with the boys? Do they want to have it by themselves? The one thing that I don't think should be segregated are the lessons. So again, in the program that we have, we look at football as a metaphor for life. And the passing drill that we talked about earlier in decision making, we put them 2 teams against one another. One team has a maximum of 5 passes that they can do, and one team has a minimum of 5. And you really set it off so that the team that passes more wins. Because if the other team passes more than 5, it's a foul and they have to get the ball back. And then we bring them in. Aside with that, we have a very social component where we talk about passing as communication and how much better we perform as a team when we communicate. So those trainings can be done together. Even if the drills by themselves might be girls and boys aside or together, it's the lessons that we can really pull in terms of equality. Because when you're on the football pitch, you're a player. Before there's a gender, before there's a sex. And when we talk about human rights, whether they're women's human rights or sex or race or ethnicity, you're human. And a lot of the times it's that zooming out in order to zoom in. And I think these always should be done together. The intent for gender and gender awareness should always be done together. And then whether they play together or next to one another, that's something that we can always ask on the ground and see where they're comfortable, and then maybe they progress to a certain point.
Thanks. Another question?
Yeah, good morning. Good afternoon. I'm wondering what the goal is with this new mix of gender. I'm very curious to know the goal of that. Because I really know that scientifically there is a difference between men and women. So what is the goal of mixing that up?
Yeah.
Well, can I try and help? I mean, I think a couple of things.
As the microphone makes it
certainly, what our coaches say, and I know this is true in France and Germany too, the benefit to girls playing with boys up until a certain level is big, just because they're playing with people that are perhaps more physically developed and faster, and they benefit from it. And there are some really good examples of that. Flip it round. if you take the England senior team setup now, England women's team went to Canada last year. We lost our first game, lost to France 1-0, and that's normally a sign for an England team in a major tournament to implode and crash and burn. We have history of that. We took out with the women's team for the first time sports psychologists, and it was fantastic to watch the post-match debrief that the women's team led. And you know, that team got stronger in the tournament, finishing very unluckily third. No disrespect to the Japanese here, but it was a lucky goal that you scored. And, you know, what the men can learn, and so what we have all of our teams together in one facility in the Midlands in England is, you know, the realization that taking sports psychology seriously and talking. So what the women's team were very good at doing were talking about the performance afterwards, holding each other to account in a good way that men often won't do because it's seen to be disrespectful. There is a lot of learning, I think, from both at an earlier stage, just sort of playing with physically stronger people, at a later stage, just actually, you know, getting what's going on between the ears clearer and making for more effective teams.
Yeah. Sarah, did you want to respond to? You'll leave it there.
No, I just think obviously there are differences, physical differences between men and women, and many other differences as well. It's just, in my experience, I went to many countries in the world, and the hook was always football, and the hook was always to kind of interact with people on a level playing field. You may not be the same size or not from the same background, you may not be as fast, but what it creates, I think, is respect between people. I'm not saying all football should be co-ed, that's not the point, but it has, for me, it has value in a sense that, like you said, some maybe women learn from playing with stronger, physically stronger people. Men learn certain things from women by interacting in a way that they're not used to. And I think that has benefits on a social level more than just purely football and technical level. So just to use this power of the love of the game to communicate on a different basis.
Okay, thank you. Next question. You can pass it on. Sorry. Yeah.
Thanks, Maria Bobenreith from Women Win. I have a comment and a question on the question of mixed gender. I think it's a big question, and it's very contextual. In primary, I think that's exactly right. What I do think in our experience as an organization at Women Win is that this is often a sequencing challenge. What I mean by that is that you have to ensure that girls and women have enough or equal social capital and access to social capital before you can mix girls and boys. And that means that if you start young, that works well at primary level. I do think that generalizing is challenging because once girls reach adolescence, there are very specific factors that affect them that are important to think about. So it's more about a sequencing than it is a yes or no question. I have a question for the panel, though, about coaching. It's not unrelated to this, which is, I looked at the millennials, and I think that we have great hope, and I know Piera talked a little bit about this, in thinking about the future and youth, and many of the isms that we're facing are simply generational, and frankly, we need new blood to come in and think differently. However, we do need to retrofit, and my question to the panel is, what existing practices are out there to help with coaches, mostly male coaches, who are arguably the most important role models for many boys and girls in communities after their families, or often in spite of their families, and volunteers. These are two areas that are fundamental to changing, I think, at grassroots, community, and elite level, the opportunities for girls and women, and would just love to hear a little bit more about not just players, but coaches and volunteers.
It's a great question. Who wants to take a stab? Joyce?
If I can just jump in and say FIFA does have a coaching program and a refereeing program, as you're aware, but additionally that we are, as I said before, working much more closely within divisions as well. So there's a lot of interaction between Sarai's division and the technical division, for example. So those are aspects that we're concentrating and thinking about very concretely. But additionally, not here in Europe, but globally, we are at the moment setting up 9 regional offices, and each of those regional offices will include a development manager, a project coordinator, a technical officer, a referees officer, and a finance officer and compliance officer. So, if you will, we're taking FIFA and FIFA people right out onto the ground to work very locally in a culturally sensitive setting, which is important. You know, we mustn't forget that we have to be culturally sensitive to the challenges faced in different parts of the globe, and that will be a key aspect to work on those topics as well. So it's a work in progress, if you will.
If I can just add something as well. Thanks, Joyce. You know, the ultimate, we talked about the business case for diversity earlier on. I mean, the ultimate business case is that you reflect the population that you serve, and you tend to be a better organization. We don't have enough female coaches, end of. So that is where you do have to overinvest and encourage people through. We don't have enough female match officials. You know, so in all these areas of the game, you're going to have to play catch up, and that's where you need to overinvest. But coach education generally, for what you were saying in terms of the, you know, the installed base, I think that's an area which I think, you know, you can make more change more quickly if you just basically try and educate people that want to be educated. And I think a lot of people do. So I think most associations, there's a FIFA program, certainly in England, coach education forms a big part of it. And social media is brilliant. Brilliant for that, sharing good ideas. Hey, I've just run a mixed team. Here's what I've done this morning. This drill works really well with 5-year-old girls. Social media is brilliant for helping share best practice. So it will improve, I'm sure.
Another question? So many.
Wow. And hello, I'm Michelle Giuliano. On coach education, we're sitting here in Geneva, we're at FIFA, and actually it's quite insular despite our incredible diversity. Because, excuse me, in Zurich. I forgot where I was. We brought about recently an event called the Insight Game. And the Insight Game is all about neuroscience and sports psychology, but what it does fundamentally is bring coaches together from multiple sport disciplines, be it Olympic, be it professional, be it individual, be it team sport. And so just as one of the distinguished members was talking about how important it is to share knowledge among countries and how mentoring among women is so vital, I wonder if FIFA has any initiative or agenda to reach out beyond UN Women, which is already awesome and excellent, and reach out beyond multinationals, which is good for best practices, but reaching into the other sport federations who are facing the same challenge of how do we retain, recruit, and promote women, which is surprisingly the #1 issue the federation is facing today. Also at the Olympic Committee. And then, so that's my question. Can you retain it? I wanted to make one comment. Sarah, nice to meet you. I race, or did, and still do, in endurance racing. I race with men. I race with women. I race in women's only boats in rowing. I race in mixed boats. Multi-sport is awesome, and your editors love it. The Discovery Channel did a fantastic job promoting the Eco Challenge. Long endurance races where skills and teaming are really the focal point. So playing co-ed is fun. It elevates the sport. It's another channel. It's not right or wrong. It elevates players. It humbles men and women. And it's just fun. It's just another way. And so I think it's another marketing angle. It's another fun thing to do. It's another way to engage young people. And absolutely, it's a way to non-threateningly help men, by virtue of sharing the same playing field with women, control their discourse. I can tell you in a 15-hour boat race, you have to eliminate at some point. Between men and women, you have to drink and hydrate and eliminate. On a boat. So you can imagine the comments you face with men who've never tried that. National team, rowers, elite athletes who've never tried that. How will you do that? What will you do? Well, I'll show you. So it can be done, and it's relevant, and it's fun, and it's great TV, and it's great teaming, and it's great leadership development, and fundamentally it's great character building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the question, yeah.
So as I understood the question is about how we are ensuring that women are taking part in the game, working within the game from a leadership, but also all the way through the game. Is that as I understood it?
It's asking, it's recruiting and retaining women and using best practices. Pardon me. Recruiting best practices from other sports. There's knowledge out there. There are people solving this problem today who are not just in the UN, not just in governments and policymakers, and not just in multinationals. They are your coaching peers.
Thank you very much for the question. I think several things. Sarai and the Women's Division are currently looking at the Women's Leadership Programme and bringing some fresh ideas to that. But I think let's take it back a stage further. We have to be what we want to be. And what I mean by that is we have to live by our own values. We have to set a standard. We can't dictate how others should behave unless we do it ourselves. And for me, we have started at FIFA very concretely. You know, I spoke to you a little bit earlier about what the president said last year in his opening remarks. And little did I realize I would be here a year later. But if we look at FIFA in itself, in the council we have 1 in every 6 council members is now a woman. That's a big step forward. In the committees, we have more women than ever before. I think it's somewhere between 44–47%. We also have at least 50% independence on the committees. So there's a strong value in itself. If we look at the administration, we have our first black woman leading the administration. We have a Samoan woman leading women's football. We have myself as a disabled woman leading member associations. That speaks a powerful language in itself. That makes a statement before any of us open our mouths and say anything. You know, quite frankly, if I visit a member association in my wheelchair, I give them a challenge, and it change makes. That's powerful. That's powerful without me having to say anything about being a disabled person, and that's progress. So when we look to the member associations, we have to lead by example. Are we going to change all of this overnight? Of course we're not. Most of us here have been doing change making and equality and diversity for a very long time. But are we on the right journey? You bet. We really and truly are. And are we investing, as we spoke earlier about the Forward programme, where it matters to make those changes? Yes, we are. But we do need to be held to account too. So my challenge to you is keep asking the questions, but keep also suggesting solutions. It's not enough to ask a question. Help us in this football family to come up with the solutions, but we're certainly on the right journey so far. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Joyce. We have time for just one last question. I'm sorry, someone who, sorry, we'll go for you in the middle if that's okay. And then we'll do final statements.
Hi, my name is Solange. I'm from Russia. Actually, it's no question. It's just a comment for you, Anthony. I love the way you said you no need to solve their problems. You only need to give them support. So last year, I was involved in World Cup for women U20 women competition in PNG. So I was working in security and safety management as a woman. It was tough, it was a challenge, but it was good. My boss was male. I struggled. I never done security. Only the thing I did when I was in New Zealand was self-defense. I could defend myself. It's what I just know to do. So I faced lots of challenge, but my boss was there for me. What he did, he will listen to me because I had to make decisions. He will listen to me. He go like, Solange, what you can do is just, let's sit down, tell me what you think we should do. Then from there, he will guide me. So what we need here, we don't need them to do the job. We only need the support. I had to do this because there are not many women in security and safety in football around. So I had to do that to empower, inspire women. That is no job for men. We can do that too. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Lakshmi, I know you're dying to ask a question. I can't deprive you of that, so please go ahead. Can we get to a microphone down here? Thanks.
No, I just thought that I should ask the panelists two questions. One, how do you think the 3 campaigns that UN Women has can play out in the football arena? The Planet 50-50 by 2030, Step It Up for Gender Equality, and that's about parity, that's about empowerment across, and I think all of you have addressed those issues in some way. The other is the He for She campaign, and of course I would very much like to ask how the men and boys movement and what it's doing can be translated, including through this campaign, into and transmuted into the football field. And then the other campaign is Unite to End Violence Against Women campaign, and oranging the neighborhood and oranging the field, so to say. Now, these 3 campaigns can be important and powerful drivers of the mindset change and the actual power change that we are seeking. And lastly, I would like to ask Valencia to share what has been the experience in this change of the masculinities that have been driving the football game, and how has it been engendered the game already in their experience? Thanks.
Hoon, why don't you go first, and then everyone can have a final word.
I think so far we started the program in 2015. We have run it for nearly two years, and I think everyone at the club, not just me at the corporate level. I think the team, the players, everyone has been responding very well with this program. I think when we first started, we actually liked this He for She program so much because we felt that it's so relevant for a football club like us, where we have all the male players, and it's for them to be able to, as a role model, they'll be able to speak up to help to drive this campaign. And what we have seen in them is that they are so happy, they are so readily take up this task. And everywhere we go when we play, whether it's in China or in Finland or when we were in Singapore or even within US, they were also readily to step up to talk about it, to share their personal experience, how they helped the wives, at home, and sharing the responsibility and all that, and giving their personal experience to share with the fans as well. So I think as a football club, it's so relevant because if you look at our fan base, it is also largely a male fan base. So if our players are able to help to transmit that message and to inspire the fans to follow and to understand, I think it is a very powerful channel to promote gender equality. And also, I think we did the Orange Your World campaign for the first game during this season, and we actually asked the players who would they like to pay tribute to, and everyone chose to pay tribute to their mother. Mm-hmm. And in the first game, we have all the players have their mother's name, their mom's name at the back of the jersey. And that also inspired many of our fans came to the stadium wearing an orange shirt with their mom's name at the back. And I think it is activities like this that will go a long way, and people remember, and people they see the message. When we were in Singapore, we do a very small campaign to get the players to promote a message to fight for foreign domestic workers. In Asia, we have many foreign domestic female workers that they work as domestic workers at home. And the message that we were trying to fight for them is to get a weekly day off, because they don't get day off. They only get day off once a month. And that is part of having a gender equality issues, and the players are all readily willing to step up and although it's a new subject for them, it's a totally new subject for them, but I think they are very keen and enthusiastic in participating in this program. So I would say that we are very happy to be involved in this, promoting this good cause.
Yeah.
And this is where we first started, that when I came on board in Valencia Football Club, our mission was to be a top professional, successful football club. But at the same time, we want to also build a football club with a heart. And this is one of the very important program that we hope that we will be able to continue and run for a long time.
Some very quick final thoughts. Keme, start.
So to your question around the three strands of the UN program, and in fact, really a wider observation on what everyone really is trying to do, which is find a way to grow the women's game and to give it the identity, whatever that identity becomes. In a sense, football and how we enjoy it, I mean, not in a sense, it's absolutely true. It is socially constructed, and there is a lesson in English football. In the 20s, women's football was massive. 40, 50, 60,000 people
at Everton,
would go to games. It became perceived as a threat, and the English FA banned it, stopped women from playing football. So where can we end up with this? It's all to play for, which I know is a dreadful, hackneyed phrase, but the fact that there is a massive pay differential, it is solvable. The fact that at the moment more people watch the male game than the women's game, it's solvable, and history shows us that it could be different.
Thanks. 30 seconds, Anthony.
Yeah, 30 seconds. Wow, okay. So I just maybe want to end on the note that one of the most beautiful things for me after working with men is how much that they realize, as difficult as it was at first to realize it because of the way men are socialized, that by accepting and embracing some feminist principles, they have benefited in their lives. And I think football specifically has a lot of room for that. Feminist principles of harmony, the dynamic, communication, how well everyone works together as a single unit, that has a lot to give to the sport, along with the strength and the empowerment that is part of that empowerment movement. So I see the ways that we can benefit from a reciprocal relationship, which is feminism, of how FIFA and football can help the women's game and women's empowerment, but how actually those principles that are inherent in women's empowerment and feminism can actually help the game to make it more entertaining, and that beautiful game that when we see it, it's mind-boggling. So I really think it's important that this isn't a handout.
Yeah.
This is strengthening by incorporating all of those things together.
Joyce, 20 seconds.
Well, I'd like to slightly turn the question on its head and just acknowledge the number of men here today. I reflect back to last year, and I didn't do an absolute count, but I'm very clear there are more men here this time around than there were this time last year. And hey, thank you very much, guys, because we so need you. Thank you. And just to take two very brief points. One, a lot of the doors that have been open for me have actually been opened by men, and thank you to those men that have done that. I've always grabbed those opportunities, and to women, let's keep supporting one another, because that's a really important aspect of this. You know, we sometimes feel we have to be 150%. We have to learn that we just have to be as good as the guys. That's enough, and if we excel more than that, that's brilliant. And secondly, that we keep supporting one another in this journey, because all of us are going to do this together. We're not going to do it individually.
Nice, thank you. Martin, do you want 10 seconds?
Yeah, I'll give you 10. It's an exam question I can't answer. All I'd say is, look, this is a massive opportunity. Billions of people play football today, and we've only really accessed half the population. If football really is a mechanism for socializing, for learning different things about one another, we are facing a massive opportunity. Football will improve, society will improve, get billions of more people to play. There's no movement on the planet like football to affect social change. So let's be part of it.
Thank you so much, everyone.